Git. Whether you love it, loathe it, understand it, or are confused by it, it is an essential tool for many, many developers, using it not just daily, perhaps hourly or minutely. I don't know if that's a word, but they use it all the time. Many of you may use the command line. Many of you may use IDE or editor plugins. And some of you, including myself, perhaps like to use front-end GUIs, graphical user interfaces. Sometimes it just helps lift and understand some of those somewhat esoteric and abstract concepts that Git has. For many years, I have used a Mac program called Fork. It just gelled with me, and I will use it as a comparison point in this video, so you'll see why I like it. But perhaps one of the best known options out there is Tower. And the good folks at Tower sent me an unlock code to have a good look at it and do some comparisons. If you enjoy what you see, you can find more about me at christianchella.com. And if you really enjoy what you see, you can actually follow an affiliate link for Tower below. You get a discount and helps me out too. So with all that out the way, let's get started. So for the most part, I have generally been using a tool called Fork, which is also Mac and Windows, and largely free. So, you have to be a little careful in some of the comparisons here. There's a couple of features I've always really liked about it, which I will quickly show you now, and use it as a comparison to Tower. There are, of course, other tools available, but it's the one that I use almost all the time. So it's worth using it as the comparison. They just released something not that long ago. I'm recording this on the 20th of December. So actually, there we go. It is reasonably up to date. So some of the things I really like about Tower is I have a fairly complicated setup of GitHub repositories all in my workspace folder. One of the things I do, for example, is this. I have a clients folder, and then inside there a whole bunch of other repositories. And it's the same for a few of these. And likewise for some of my creative projects. So here, same thing. I actually have several repositories in here. And one thing that Tower does is you can just scan a particular directory and it will reflect all of that structure. So I actually get everything in automatic subfolders. And to be honest with you, because of my rather complicated organization, that's probably the feature that keeps me using Fork as much as I do. One other thing that I quite like is you can actually set notifications for an account. And now recently I have somewhat stopped using this as much, but you could see it here because I'm also getting those notifications from other apps now. So I'm not using it as much as I used to. That was always kind of cool as well. And then beyond that, well, it's sort of standard stuff. You can create branches. You can base the branches in other things. You have stashes, tags, submodules. You have commit window. I mean, there's a lot of kind of standard stuff here. Yeah. So that's sort of where I'm coming from. Now let's have a look how Tower compares. This is the Tower window. A lot more in terms of settings. I'm going to look through some of these because they are important. So you can set the default directory here, which I have done, and the terminal you want to use. And then a bunch of other settings here that are useful, things like what do you want to do with submodules, stashes, etc., etc., the number of commits in history, date format, what to open the file in, and font size is something I need more and more. Appearance, of course, I don't think you necessarily need to. There we go, sort of expected. There we go. Git config. Now this is also important because often there's multiple different versions of Git installed. You have the system one, the Apple provided one, which is a little bit out of date, the one that comes with Tower, and I always use Homebrew, so that is their set there. And Fork has the same thing. SSH signing through one password. That is also in Fork, but in a slightly different place. I think I have to remember. I think it's per repository. Yeah, here. Whether you want to sign commits as well by default or not, and then diff tools, etc., etc. Text, not talking about. Editor, it's not something I use a massive amount on. But there we go. Themes, mostly on the code. user profile. So this is where things get useful, and you can use this to then switch between those. And again, fork tends to do this on a repository level. We'll see if that is also available shortly. But here is where you set the name, the username, and then the signing key from SSH, which is also quite useful. Templates for commit messages. It would be interesting to see if you could actually pull these from Git as well. I don't know. Integrations, command line, how to open, etc., etc. Gerrit, if you use Gerrit, I have used it in the past. Now, this is something that is different as well, the SSH agent. Environment variables, I'm not sure how many times I need those with Git, but they're there. Update, etc., etc. Advanced. Now, this is interesting as well because this kind of has a knowledge of where you have Git repositories, but doesn't add them anywhere. So it's sort of similar-ish to the feature in fork, but not quite the same. It knows they're there, but it doesn't put them anywhere, apart from in its own kind of history. Here we can add the different services. This is my GitHub account. I don't actually know what those people are. And you could see the repositories I have access to here, and just a shortcut way to clone them all. I mean, I have quite a lot. Search would possibly be good. I don't know if that would do that here. Yes, it does. So that's good. Public keys added here, and then more details on your account. That's pretty much it. Or you could create a repository from here as well, which is actually quite helpful. This is something I find myself endlessly having to go backwards and forwards to do when you're in a tool. Okay, cool. So let's actually add something. I think I'll add something existing. It's probably easier. So we can just add from here. We can also drag and drop. There's a tiny little plus button down here that creates groups. So when I was looking here, these are not things I created manually. I could, but they are actually just reflecting the file system, which is something I say I quite like. So with Tower, you can create groups, but they're all just inside of Tower. Okay. So this is showing me a whole bunch of repositories I could add. And this is some areas you probably like. Go often has all these. There's a lot of extra things we don't necessarily need here. I think I'm just going to add something. I'll add my website for now. Interesting, it doesn't take me directly to the folder I have defined, but it's okay. So new site, there we go. And so far this starts to feel pretty familiar. I'm going to create a group as well, just for the hell of it. So, I know what this means. I always accidentally make that caps. I don't know why. So there we go. And I can just drag it into it. I don't think this does anything else really. No. So here is the repository itself. We can see the committer identity, descriptions, a whole bunch of other things, the remote. Okay, let's just open it. This is where things get more interesting. I'm going to make some changes. Let's have a quick look at some of these buttons up here though. So we have quick actions. This is a little control palette. I wonder if we can trigger this with... No, I don't know what the command is. It's not any of the usual ones. A. Okay, interesting. There we go. Show in Tower more actions. So that takes us straight to there. This is nice. I actually like being able to see this here. I don't think this is a feature that Fork has. I don't see it anyway. No. Unless I'm completely missing it, I don't see it. So that's pretty nice. It'd be interesting to see if we can do any kind of review. I will come to that in a second. This is a personal website, so no one is reviewing anything. But you can see the conversation. I mean, there is no conversation in commits. This is nice. I mean, you could do this sort of thing inside VS Code as well, which makes sense. But having it in the GUI here is cool. Let's just get that back. I want to see that other actions show in Tower. And there's not really... Okay, there's not really anything else there. What else could we have? Okay, these all are so far exactly the same. There we go. So there's a few more sub-actions there. Okay, cool. Here, I'm guessing, is fetch. Yep. Pull, push, sync. It's going to often get a bit messy, but a lot of these tools try this. Merging another branch. Now, quite often you can also do this from here. Yes, merge, rebase, etc., etc. This is very similar as well to fork. And this parent branch, select other parent branch. I'm going to come to that in a minute. This is a new feature that's in development. Apply stash, save stash, workflows. So enable Git workflow and stacked branches. That is the feature I'll come back to in a moment. Refresh, I guess. Yeah, okay. Going to make some changes. I wonder if some tools will have like an open in. You don't see it. Let's see if there's anything in. Seemingly not. So that is something that's a little missing. Open in terminal. Nothing else though. So I'll just have to do this in VS Code manually. So let's go through a flow. I'm just going to update some loose dependencies. So let's make some loose changes and go through that sort of flow. I can create a branch from here. I can also create a branch from down here, but not from here, strangely. So I always prefer to do it this way. I don't know why. It's just the way I've always done it. Let's... I was going to do a dependency update, basically. Check out branch. Okay. You can see the parent. I'll come back to this later. This is a new feature, which we'll have a look at. Okay. All right. Now, interestingly, there is no open in VS Code or something like that. I have to just sort of do that separately. I couldn't find any way of doing that. So we can see here. So I'm just going to update all of these using one of my favorite VS Code extensions. Save it. Okay, we can see the change. Now let's see some of the things we can do here. So interestingly, and this is something that exists in fork but only in chunks, is we could actually stage and unstage lines, which I quite like. So let's say, for example, this has a problem when we tested it, but we'd like to get the others in. We can just discard that line. And then actually after more changes, I realize, to be honest with you, I would rather actually test all of this. So I'm just going to update this line, for example. So I can actually selectively do these things. So I'll say, I'm just going to update Astro, for example. Okay. And now I could push this change, track the new remote branch, skip any hooks. That has been something that stung me a few times when hooks keep failing. Published a branch feels kind of scary. Instead of push, publish feels like I'm doing something else with it. I'm not sure why. It's just me. Okay, I'm just going to trust that's there. What I actually want to try and do is create a pull request from this branch right here. Now there are notifications. I have do not disturb mode on, so you haven't really been seeing them, but we could see them here, for example. Okay. So I now have a pull request, and we can see it here as well. I suppose I should go and double check on GitHub. I mean, I can't see why it would be lying to me, but let's take a look anyway. Here's my website here. I can see tool pull requests. It's already a start. There we go. So let's have a conversation with myself. Look at that. It's pretty quick as well. I love having conversations with myself. Pretty quickly. There we go. Okay. I mean, web APIs sometimes takes a moment. Commits, yeah, change set, etc., etc. So I guess we could merge. I don't really want to merge it actually, so, but we could if we wanted to. Yeah, and then delete afterwards. So, and also I'm assuming the same options as if I did this on GitHub. Sometimes you have to really trust this is going to work before you do this, because maybe there's a slight difference, but I would hope and assume they're using the API. stashes. You could see I'm quite a fan of stashes and then forget about them. I guess we could apply and delete. Yeah. Pull request we just saw. I can also view this in browser. Edit pull request. Huh. Okay. Branches review. This is also something that exists in Fork, but in a slightly different place. It's kind of here, and generally it shows you icons showing if it's been merged or not. But as you can see, it's not always reliable. I don't know if I have anything where it shows it better. No, I'm not seeing it for some reason, but it's usually there. So this is different. We can see where it's tracking to if one leads to a conflict, which is kind of nice as well. Settings, we saw this already. Convert Gitmoji. I have never heard of Gitmoji, but now I am fascinated. Sign in commits, we saw all this already. LFS, whether you want to enable large file something, I can't quite remember. Git flow, which is a workflow, and then the ignore and excludes patterns as well. So that was a lot of the basics. Let's look at some of the features that are more novel or that it claims to be better than others. So that we saw this merge conflict here. I obviously don't want to merge this, but let's have a look at resolving conflicts. Okay, I will stash those. Yeah, I mean, I don't actually want to do this, but we'll see what happens. Okay, so here we can see the problems. And this is obviously something you often get with a merge. There's a lot of things that do merge successfully, so we can just focus on the problems. And normally I would just do this in VS Code, to be honest with you, which we can probably find. Yeah. Here, for example. It's sort of easier in some respects. Let's see how it looks here instead. So you can open, and now we get some options to open things. I'm not sure if I agree with all of those tools, but anyway. And comparing, etc., etc. So it's saying choose a merge tool. Okay, so it doesn't do it by default. Okay, so it's kind of similar to other tools. You generally have to go to an external merge. It sort of gave me the impression it was going to do something itself maybe, but I guess not. Yeah, and then we can just overall say resolve from where, for example. One other interesting feature it mentions is the ability to undo. I mean, we know that reverting commits is kind of the same, but yeah, so we can undo the abort merge and come back to here. Can I keep going backwards? Undo merge, undo publish branch. So where things get interesting. Sometimes this might be a little slow. Undo commit. What commit am I undoing though? Oh yeah, this is the right one. Undo apply patch. And I don't know if it can keep going. I'm also a bit worried about what I may be undoing. I suppose nothing happens until I push it. Undo checkout revision. Yeah, you can keep going, which is interesting. I think it's using a mix of application and Git history to do this, but that's kind of cool. If you don't really come from the Git workflow history, you can sort of use a term that is more familiar to you. And then here in the branch, you can see the things you are currently sort of undoing. One of the new features is stacked PRs. This is something that is commonly used by teams who are working with feature flags instead of feature branches. And it is available in the current version, but you have to sort of enable it. So let's do that. It's up here. There we go. So I'll use this as the branch to be stacked into. I'll create a new stacked branch. We'll call it updates. Why not? Let's keep down that path. And now when changes happen here, so let's change back into that. I don't know. Let's, for example, go to here. So you can see this icon shows up to show that it is diverged. Yeah, pending changes in parent branches. Restack. There we go. So it pulls in the changes from that and makes it part of that. I don't know how you get that interface though, this kind of stacked interface here. I'm not sure why I'm not seeing that. Maybe that bit's in beta. I don't know. I'm not seeing that though. And we could maybe if we keep going, let's see, images. Now we get it. I don't know why we didn't get it from there though. Okay. So it's kind of weird, doesn't it? So updates, and let's just do the same sort of thing again. Yeah, now we can see it here. Cool. Yeah, it's interesting. I suppose if you use this kind of feature, you'll think this is more or less useful. I'm not sure. Of course, there's lots of other features I didn't look at. I think the thing with Git, and especially when you're working with other people, is that's when these tools show whether they're helpful or get in the way. I like the way in its feature list and its help documents that kind of shows you why these are useful. Like stashing, for example, I kind of know what it is, but not everybody does. So you can sort of see here like why you might want to use it. And that was my look at Tower. Again, if you liked what you saw, you can follow my affiliate code on the bottom of the screen or also in the show notes. So am I going to switch? The thing is, I'm not sure. As with many tools like this, there's features I like from what I haven't used before, and there's features I like from what I use all the time. I really do like that in Fork, you can just reflect the local file system. That is something that I just find that I get everything in one place with very minimal effort. Whereas in Tower, I'd have to recreate a lot of that. But Tower looks a lot nicer. And I really like having that pull request and discussion feature right in line as well. So I don't know. Maybe if the good folks at Tower add some of those features I'm missing, then I would definitely switch. But for the time being, I'm not quite sure. Maybe I will keep using it a bit longer and see if the features it does have over Fork just push me alongside and I forget about that whole file system representation. I have been Christian Schiller. If you enjoyed what you saw, you can find more about me at christianschiller.com. You can support me in all sorts of ways by clicking a bunch of the buttons underneath here, leave a comment, share the video, tell me what you thought and what you use. Thank you very much for joining me, and take care, everybody.